You're taking a look inside Kansas politics. Welcome in. I'm Denisha Richard. According to the State of Mental Health in America report, the state of Kansas ranked last in the nation for providing access to mental health resources. Of course, Kansans are struggling with their mental health. Some are, and many times it's so hard to ask for help. But what's even worse is finally getting the courage to ask for help, and those resources aren't there. That's the reality that some Kansans who face mental health struggles face. We're going to talk about that today. Joining me is two mental health professionals. We have Madison Elliott with NAMI Kansas, and we have Alan Davis with Sunshine Connection of Topeka. Thank you both for joining me today. So that report, it highlighted an alarming number. Last in the state, even out of the District of Columbia, we are number 51 when it comes to that overall care for Kansans when it comes to access to mental health. Do you think that number is surprising? Madison, let's start with you.
I read that report right when it came out, and it was quite jarring, honestly. Seeing 51st, not just 50th even. 51st. Wow. Mm-hmm. So I've kind of been using it as more of like a call to action, essentially. Mental Health America is a great organization, and they do a great job of collecting data and highlighting all these issues. And I think it's a great way to take note of the areas where we need to improve, rather than getting down about it. I think we really just should use that as a call to action and try to elevate those voices as much as we can, do what we can to improve those numbers.
Basically telling Kansas to wake up, that it is time to pay attention. Alan, when you saw those numbers, 51 out of the entire country, what were your thoughts?
I was very surprised, actually, because there was a time when Kansas was highly regarded in the mental health field, when the Miniger Clinic was in Topeka, Kansas, before they moved. The other thing that struck me about the report was that we were 48th in the percentage of persons who had serious contemplation of suicide.
Right.
And I think, well, there have been changes with that, with the 988. But that was what struck me.
Like you just said, you speak to a lot of Kansans every day, different walks of life who may have different needs that you all hear. Have you heard any concerns from Kansans about what they may need for their mental needs, and that they may not be receiving it? Madison, have you heard any concerns from Kansans?
Oh yeah, we have a long list of priorities on the NAMI Kansas website as to what we're focusing on. So our crisis response system is going to be in the state of Kansas is a huge thing that we're looking at, as well as medication and treatment access and affordability.
And Alan, what have you heard from those who come into your community center?
Well, some of them come from the nursing facilities, and they have concerns about being able to leave the nursing facility. They say they don't want to stay there that long, but they're there.
Where would they rather go?
Into the community, to some sort of community-based residence.
And so they say that, hey, this is not the place for me, but do they have anywhere else to go?
Well, that's something that we have to work on. Mm-hmm. People say, well, people fall through the cracks. What we have to work on is filling in the cracks. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that Sunshine Connection tries to help with, is finding services.
Of course, we have a long way to go, but there has definitely been some improvements in the mental health care system in Kansas, so it's only up from here. But I want to thank you guys for joining us today to talk a little bit more about what Kansans are seeing when it comes to supporting those who need mental health assistance. So thank you guys for joining me today. And we'll be right back. Thanks for watching Inside Kansas Politics. Stay with us.
The 27 News Storm Tracker is sponsored by Wilson Tire.
There's no need for batteries. New Sound's prescription hearing aids have a rechargeable option. Just put them in at night and they're ready for you the next morning. This month, there's no additional charge for this convenience. Call New Sound and save hundreds of dollars.
At the Mattress Hub, we believe that healthy sleep has the power to change the way you live. During our Tax Time Savings event, find up to 50% off on the best brands in sleep, including Sealy mattresses starting at $2.99. Sleep well and save big, only at the Mattress Hub.
It's time to update your kitchen with Countercraft. Bring your ideas and your measurements or we can measure for you. We have quartz, granite, and quartzite on site to choose from. Let our team show you how easy the process is from start to finish. Countercraft is where craftsmanship matters.
Don't miss Curtis, the Mentalist, at the historic Columbian Theater in Wamego.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. I'm Denisha Richard. Joining me now is a mother who is advocating for parents to have more choices for their older children when it comes to their mental health. Joining me now is Lori Barnes. I want to thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks.
So you are advocating for HB 2250, which also stands for the Supported Decision Making Agreements Act. And you say you're doing it all for your son, Daniel. You say you lost your son, Daniel, to suicide back in 2021.
That's correct.
And tell me more about what Daniel was like. Was he the light of your life? He was your oldest son, so
Yes.
he had a lot of responsibility watching the younger kiddos, right?
He was very artistic. He did a lot on his own. He learned a lot. Amazing art. Loved music, played a great pianist. He was more on the artsy side. He soccer growing up, but then once the mental health started getting involved, sports didn't as much, but he would do math relays, Scholars Bowl, anything that he could use like his brain more, or art stuff for coping skills.
And so you mentioned that you knew that Daniel needed mental health resources at a very young age. Do you remember what age that was?
Yeah, 8th grade is when it really came to a head, but looking back, you could see little things, as he was getting older, like, oh wow, I wish I would have recognized that, but you just don't know. When it's your first kid, you don't know a lot of signs. But in 8th grade, he started having some issues. And he went to therapy, and we did a psych eval on him, and when the first time they talked, they said he was like 7 out of 10 when they asked him on whether he wanted to take his life or not. And so we had him in his hospital for the first time when he was in 8th grade, and then just got new beds, new therapists, and just kept pushing.
So you also talked about resources available where you lived. You said that you lived in more of a rural area of Kansas, and in order to get the mental health resources that you needed for Daniel, you had to leave. How hard was that to do?
We had to go to Wichita. It's about an hour drive, but you have to do whatever you can for your child and whatever resources are best. We did that probably 8th grade until even after high school. He went to Wichita. And it's, there's in the small rural towns, the resources aren't available. And if they are, it's usually at a different level than what you need.
Right, right. And when we talk about your son, Daniel, and the help that he needed, you say he did ask you for help.
Yeah, he did. He knew that there was something wrong. And he would be like, I can't do this, I can't do this. And so we'd go to therapy, we'd try a new medication, we would, he did not like feeling that. He was like, I just want to be normal.
The last 2 weeks of his life were very hard, you said.
Yeah,
they were
very hard.
Why?
I think he had kept losing jobs. His mental illness kept getting worse, and he would have a job for like 6 to 8 weeks, and then he would have a meltdown or have an episode and would be out for 2 or 3 days. And then he'd have to go find another job. And it got to that point where like, okay, we need to figure something else out. What we're doing is not working. Come home, let's try a different avenue. And he did not want to do that. And we would call him and call him and call him. And he was not happy. He cried all day, he'd sleep. My husband went down, he was actually in Oklahoma City at the time, at my brother's house, and he could not, he left. I saw him 2 days before, and he came up because I still get his medication for him. And I was like, okay, something's still wrong. And he's like, I'll be fine, I'll be fine. And it's not right.
As a mother, that mother's intuition.
Yeah,
right.
And we were at our wits' end. I mean, we didn't know what else to do, because when you're an adult child, you don't have a say. You know, we had when he turned 18, there was a situation at a school that he was falsely accused of something, and it was proven that he was not involved in anything, but that kind of triggered him to a whole nother level, you know, because I think a lot of people in the rural towns look at it as character flaws and not chemical flaws because they don't understand. And so we had a power of attorney since he was still in high school for his health and his medical and, well, not medical, I guess health, and his school stuff and whatever, so we could help. But when you call the crisis teams, that doesn't fall in that category.
Because they also say, hey, once they're of age,
right,
there's nothing they can do. If your child says they are fine, if they're over the age of 18,
they're fine.
And that's what they told you.
Right. And even though when you're on your insurance and you're still responsible for them, you don't have a say.
And shortly after you made that phone call and they said there was nothing they could do, what happened after that?
The crisis teams, and we called in 3 times those 2 weeks, and they would go to his house and say, I'm fine. And I'm like, well, he's not fine. He's not fine. And my thing is, why are they, you know, build a rapport with these kids? Or, I mean, it's somebody's kid, somebody's spouse. I mean, no matter what the situation is, but, you know, ask them, when's the last time you ate? When's the last time, you know, have you slept? Have you taken your medicine? Where they want to open up to you. Because a lot of them do want help. They're just really scared.
And so since you've lost Daniel, I'm sure it's very hard for your family, but it has given you strength to go out and make a difference. And you're now advocating for HB 2250. And tell us a little bit more about what that bill would do.
What it would be is, like, since Daniel even signed the power of attorney giving us, he would have signed this bill also. It's notarized. It's not like a guardianship. They still keep their rights, and you just help them. They tell you what their decisions are, and you help them make those decisions. So, like, when we called the crisis team in, you know, he would assign, my parents can help me make a decision on my mental health. Or, you know, we could say, hey, you know what? He wants to be okay. He's given us this, you know, responsibility to help him. Even just take him for 24 hours, even just to monitor him and make sure things are okay, you know. And like impulse spending, a lot of these kids, you know, when they're young and they start having jobs and start having money, they could say, hey, help my, you know, my family or guardian, whoever, your friend, your roommate, can help make those decisions, or not help make them, can do what you want. You know, you make those decisions together, and you don't have to spend $5,000. You don't have to go through a court. You don't have to get their rights taken away. It's something that can be notarized and done quickly.
If you were able to get the crisis team to step in with you telling them, my son needs help, do you think things would have been different?
He still would have been struggling, but I think he would have had time to think about it versus doing something. You know, I think my always thing is the pause. In mental health, they have the semicolon, like my story's not done. Mine's always the pause. Pause, stop, think, you know, get together, figure it out. And I think that would have gave him that little pause he needed to sit there and really think about it instead of being impulsive.
What do you want legislators to know about a legislation like this? This is needed. This could have helped save your son. What do you want to tell them?
There's a lot of people out there anymore, mental health, especially since COVID. These young adults are really struggling with mental health. And it's just, they need us, they need parents, they need that help a little bit longer just to get things figured out and to move on. And it would make a world of difference, I think, for a lot of people, because there's a lot of middle of the road, you know, or they're not so bad they have to be in a psych ward, or I don't know how the proper way to say that is. But it would be something that can still keep their rights, but ease into that transition. And if it's something you have to keep that way, you know, forever, that's fine. But not everybody needs consistent or constant help.
What do you miss most about your son, Daniel?
He was my concert person. He liked to go to concerts with me. His art, he was just he was very sweet, great soul, very caring, would always hug you, love you, look you in the eye. He was just a good kid. And it's just the mental health, you know, he just struggled. And it was hard to see somebody like that, you know, and it's hard on your family, you know, and it's just, even though there was 60 texts a day sometimes of saying how he wanted help or how he wanted to be normal and how he was having a bad day, even though at the end of those days you'd be like, oh my gosh, you know, I would like to have those texts back.
And even though you won't get those text messages back,
right,
you're able to fight for your son now.
Yes, and in our little rural areas, there's nothing, you know, and ever since then I've started out, I've advocated for him all through school, you know, so I've just kept going. But I've got NAMI in our area now. Representative Riley helped me get that started. AFSP, we did fundraisers for that for the fair this year. So every school in our county now has resources from elementary to high school. It's just, we need, these little rural towns don't understand it. And we just need as much as possible, and especially, you know, since we have to drive an hour away for things, you know, it's like the House Bill 2250 or these other resources being in the community would be a great help.
All right, Lori, thank you so much for sharing your story and for using your voice for your son Daniel and for other Kansans as well to help make a difference.
Thank you.
You're watching Inside Kansas Politics. We'll be right back.
Huge savings on all our top brands going on now at Vanderbilt's. Stylish Wolverine waterproof rancher boots. Our price, $114.99. Carolina pull-on work boots on sale. Soft and safety toe, your choice, $134.99. Save $50 on our best-selling waterproof wedge sole boots. Wolverine Wilderness Hikers on sale, $79.99.
Work boots center, Vanderbilt.
There are many reasons to choose Renewal by Andersen replacement windows, and our exclusive Fibrex material is a significant one. Renewal by Andersen Fibrex windows look and feel like wood, but have the low maintenance features of vinyl.
Well, it doesn't rot, it doesn't peel. We spent over 20 years developing the Fibrex.
Fibrex is twice as strong as vinyl, while providing the stability and beauty of a wood window.
So if you're going to stay in your home for 20 years, there's no reason why you wouldn't go with our product. You will see how well it lasts, and it'll last beyond the 20 years.
For a limited time only, buy 5 windows, save $1,500. Buy 9 windows, save $3,000, or choose 2.99% financing.
Renewal by Andersen, the better way to a better window.
Properties that are for sale by owner are typically on the market longer, sell for significantly less, and leave a seller open to potential legal problems than those properties sold with the assistance of a realtor. A home may be the largest and most complicated transaction you'll ever make. Trust a realtor with the ethics, expertise, and education to act in your best interest and guide you through the process. Find homes for sale in Northeast Kansas and a Sunflower Association Realtor member that's right for you at sunflowerrealtors.com.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. I'm Denisha Richard. One of the major topics in the mental health crisis is the state of Kansas hospitals. The facilities help provide resources to help those with mental needs get back on their feet. But some mental health experts say we have got a long way to go. And for many of us, there's a lot that we don't know about what Kansas hospitals need. Well, let's find out. Joining me now is Amy Campbell with the Kansas Mental Health Coalition. Amy, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So what would you say is the state of Kansas's hospital when it comes to the mental health needs?
Kansas has been in a crisis for capacity for state mental health hospital beds for some time, and that crisis continues today.
It continues today, and there's so much that we need to do for that. Right now, what would you say is the amount of mental health beds available in the state of Kansas?
So we have just over 200 mental health beds, if you use census numbers, in the state mental health hospitals. And then additionally, the state contracts for state institution alternative beds with community hospitals, and that number varies.
So we have about 200, as you said, in the other varied numbers, but how many are actually needed? Do you know that?
So the 2019 Mental Health Task Force report recommended adding 36 to 60 beds immediately and up to 221 beds in the near future in order to meet the needs of Kansas.
And so the bottom line is we need more beds.
That's true.
We need more beds. So when we talk about the cost of these beds in the state of Kansas, what is the approximate cost for each bed in a hospital?
So the cost of operating a psychiatric bed in the state of Kansas varies dramatically. At the Larned State Hospital campus, those beds can be operated for just under $500 a day. At the Osawatomie campus, it's more like $1,100 a day. And then in private community hospitals, it's higher than that based on the fact that you can't spread it over a large campus to control the cost.
Wow, this is a lot that many people don't know when they think about the cost and what it takes to operate these mental resources when it comes to Kansas hospitals. What about staffing? I know that is a large portion of the mental health crisis. We need staffers to help staff these beds.
Kansas, unfortunately, was facing a mental health workforce crisis prior to the pandemic, and the pandemic simply made that worse. So our state mental health hospitals are vastly understaffed, but we also find that our community resources and facilities are understaffed as well.
Right, so we need more beds, but if we get the beds, where are we going to find these employees to staff them?
Well, and that is an issue. Right now, the Kansas legislature is looking at initiatives to create career pathways to help people get into mental health careers, and we are fully supportive of those efforts because the more people we can bring in these helping professions, the better off we will be.
Okay, so we talk about the Kansas legislature. As a mental health professional, you're around a lot and you see what people need in these hospitals. What do you think legislators and elected officials need to do in order to meet the needs of these wards in the Kansas hospitals?
The Kansas Mental Health Coalition and our members have been advocating for multiple pathways to create relief for this situation. The fact is, nobody wants to end up in a state mental health hospital, but then that means that we have to have the crisis response and the community-based services to serve those folks. So right now there are funding requests in front of the legislature to boost CCBHCs and community-based services like crisis stabilization centers, crisis intervention centers, and then additional supplemental funding to fund the building of a 50-bed hospital in the Wichita region. There are also efforts to streamline certification of mental health professionals to make it easier for folks to get reciprocal licenses in other states and be able to practice here to help boost our workforce.
And I just want to rewind just a little bit to wrap it up. We talked a little bit about the staffing needs for hospitals, but the cost, as you mentioned earlier, is a little bit different in the years past for this year. Describe what the cost for agency nurses in particular will go up to for this year.
So the legislature just heard testimony from the director of the hospitals that said that last fiscal year they spent around $20 million funding agency nurses. These are not state employees, these are private contract nurses, and that this year that could exceed $40 million.
And so it doubles. That is a crisis. This is something that Kansas legislators and we need to pay attention to, right?
That's exactly right, because when people are in a mental health crisis, we need to have a safe, certified bed for them to be treated so that they can get back on their feet and approach recovery back in the community. Without that, we are relying on emergency rooms and jails, which is not the appropriate place for folks with these illnesses.
All right, Amy, thank you so much for your words today. Thank you for watching Inside Kansas Politics. We'll be right back.
Devon James and 27 News, honoring veterans through Veterans Salute. We're showing our appreciation for the veterans that make it possible to enjoy living in a free country by sharing their stories. Be sure to watch 27 News Wednesdays at 10 p.m. as Devon James Injury Lawyers and 27 News honor our veterans with a Veterans Salute. Veterans Salute, sponsored by Devon James Injury Lawyers.
The crown difference truly is the people. It's not just the experience of buying the car, it's the service.
It was very personal from the moment we got in there.
It's just like coming to see friends.
When Miles first came to town, Cottonwood was one of the first events that he sponsored with the Gus Packer 3-on-3.
He's been involved in every aspect of the community. I think that's huge.
I know there's a lot of options, but it's always been Crown.
What makes Best Reviews the best reviews?
Milk?
They have an unbiased team that researches products in real-world situations to give reliable recommendations on pretty much everything. So you can be confident that whatever you're buying is right for you, no matter what life throws at it. Like your daughter Clementine, for example. For the best reviews, go to bestreviews.com. Seriously, before you buy anything, ever.
1, 2, 3, here I come. Wait a minute, do you have your COVID booster? Grandpa, are you ready or not?
The past 2 years have been, well, rough. We all lost a lot of time doing the things we love with the ones we care about most. Don't lose any more time. Get your COVID-19 booster shot today.
I love you, Grandpa.
I love you too, buddy.
And make the most of every single moment with the most important people in your life.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. You heard from mental health advocates who are right there in your communities on how the state of Kansas can provide more resources to those they serve. We also heard from a grieving mother who is fighting for legislation to help give parents a choice on how to provide mental health care to their adult children. And we also heard about the state of Kansas hospitals. All of these individuals have individual goals, but they all agree on one thing: to see improved mental health care in the state of Kansas. Of course, if you're watching this today and you need help, call the number 988. That number is totally free and available to you 24/7. And always remember, you're not alone. That was your look inside Kansas politics. We'll see you right here, same time, same place next week. Thanks for watching.